Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Club. This is the place everyday real estate investors gather to share their best stories, biggest insights, and favorite tactics to grow a portfolio of cash flowing properties in today's market. Here's your host, Gabe Peterson.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are, whatever day it is for you. It is always Friday, as I say, every episode. So we're bringing, again, that Friday energy to you. It's going to be a good day because we're talking about land with Logan Swanson here on the podcast. He is a land flipper. He is and also has his own podcast, the Land Fixer Podcast. So for all you guys who just want to buy some dirt, this is the podcast for you. And I do have to preface all this. We are rehabbing my kitchen in the other side of the wall. And so there might be a little bit of background noise, but you know, it's real estate. I'm sure you guys will understand. So with that, Logan, thank you very much for hopping on the show. I'm excited to jump into this. Gabe,
thanks for having me, man.
All right. I told you before we got on here, we always like starting with stories. We like to hear how people got to where they are. So why don't you take us to the beginning of your story and tell us how you got here?
Yeah. So around 2017, 2018, I was working as a construction project manager during the day, and I was moonlighting at a restaurant in the evenings, like a high-end steakhouse here in Dallas, and had 3 kids, married, and just no time for really any of it, right? I wasn't really able to spend time with my family. I wasn't able to participate in just putting my kids to bed every night. And on top of all that, with all my hard work, we had effectively no savings. You know, we were kind of getting by. We were lucky enough to buy a house early, but we didn't really have a whole lot else going for us. Car notes, credit cards, everything just seemed to suck every penny out of us. So, I said, something's got to change, right? And through my construction job, it was commission only. So I got a little bit of a taste for like my first big commission check. I closed out a project and I got a $10,000 commission. And I was like, you know.
You were a project manager and it was commission only?
Yes. Yeah. Sales and project management.
Wow.
Yeah. Roofing and remodeling in Dallas, Fort Worth is a wild beast. There's no licensing. It's running and gunning. So,
all right.
So anyways, yeah, I got my first big paycheck, $10,000. And it just kind of dawned on me that this world really isn't designed to make you rich if you're collecting payments from an employer, or at least those opportunities are few and far between. And I knew the clip at which I wanted to get my life back on track. It wasn't going to happen working for somebody else. So I started digging into what I could do. Folks around me suggested I get into real estate. So I started reading and Bigger Pockets and podcasts and all this. And I was like, everybody was saying, go buy a house, you know, like go buy a rental home. I was like, I can barely afford my house. Other people said wholesaling, and just none of it really added up for me until finally I kind of kept going down the rabbit hole, and I ran into a guy who his name's Mark Podolsky, the land geek, and he taught a course on land flipping. Yep. And I said, wow, you know, he said you could go buy land for $50 an acre, $100 an acre, and then just go resell it for $200 or $300 an acre out in West Texas and New Mexico and some of these desert arid regions. And I said, well, that's more affordable for me. You know, that's viable. So I started. I like I said, I really didn't have money. So I went to a family friend of ours who was kind of a mentor at the time. And I got a $2,000 zero interest loan for 1 year, and used that to go send my first direct mail, start acquiring land, and I've never turned back. Within 3 years, we had land holdings in 14 states. We, to date, have done, I don't know how many hundreds of transactions, funded millions of dollars worth of land transactions. We've grown into more than just flipping. You know, we do subdivisions. We do funding for other investors. I have a land marketing website. We have a new wholesaling website. We've just kind of kept growing and growing. And now with the podcast, I'm really just trying to shed light on the industry as a whole, which is more competitive now, but there's still a lot of room to grow within its verticals.
Nice, man. Yeah, I love having you land guy. I've had Mark on the show. He's very
Yeah.
knowledgeable, and I love having you land guys here because it's such a unique asset class for real estate. It's really it is the basis of real estate because it is the land. It's what everything is built on
It's
top of.
That's right, foundational.
So you can't be more foundational than land. But it's also a really great strategy, especially for people who are just getting into real estate because of exactly the things that you mentioned. That the barrier to entry is a little bit lower in terms of the capital required for most land parcels. I'm not going to say there are. I've seen land go for millions of dollars in inner cities,
yeah.
but for if you're looking, West Texas, Arizona, some Midwest areas, you can find land for pretty cheap. So the barrier to entry is lower, and there's still good. It's not as competitive. I'm not going to say it's not competitive. Everything is competitive, but it's not as competitive as multifamily, triple net lease, that kind of stuff. Things that are that really have the big dollars into it. So great asset. So yeah, I love talking to you guys. Why don't you kind of went through your story. You said you got that first deal, and then you said you got millions of dollars later. You've done plenty of deals since then, but there is a huge gap in the middle, and that's what we really want to focus on for people who are interested in this asset class, who want to grow their own business. So let's start with the kind of the catalyst for after that first deal. Once you're able to really establish it into a business, not a hey I did a deal, but hey, this is an actual business that I'm running. What were try to pick out like one or two or three things that you did that allowed you to scale it?
Yeah. So, well, first thing, being one of the Mark students back in the day, he was preached heavily on owner financing your land, generating a note portfolio that allowed you to sell land for a higher price point, but then also sort of create a predictable stream of income into your business. And we heavily relied on that. Kind of two things happened for us simultaneously. One, we started doing really well in this county, Culberson County, where we were buying 5, 10, 20 acre tracts of land, middle of nowhere. There's, I think, one town in the whole county called Van Horn with a population of like a few thousand people. And it's an enormous county, enormous. And early on, we found somebody who said, hey, I'll buy any land in this area for roughly $300 an acre. He was an oil and gas guy, and he was sort of a land collector. He was buying speculatively, trying to create this patchwork of vacant land because he saw a future in. This is what he told me. I don't really know. He was kind of sketchy in some ways, but he said he had this vision of Texas being all solar and wind powered, and these solar farms required water because they're all effectively steam engines. I don't know all the details.
I did not know that, actually. That's funny that something that is generating electricity requires a different source of electricity to power it.
Well, I mean, I believe there's different types, but the one that's most efficient is that you have this array of solar panels. Anyways, I don't know all the details, he's like, I need all this land, a patchwork of it, because they're going to eventually need to start running water lines to all these different farms that are going to spring up. And I want my land to be in the middle of all these, and I'm going to get easements and negotiate whatever. So $300 an acre, I was buying for like $50 to $100 an acre at the time, and there was no shortage of land for me to buy. So very early on, we found this like money making machine. We would buy 50 to 100 acres at a time, get in touch with him. Once we actually drove out to Midland where he was, and he just handed us $26,000, $30,000, and within that first year, I felt like I was stealing. It was like I was absconding with money. And then simultaneously, we were selling a lot of these properties on owner finance. So we were buying a 5-acre lot for $400, and we would sell it for $99 down and $99 a month for 2 years or 3 years. And you take 10 of those notes, and all of a sudden you're making $1,000 more a month with no tenants, no termites, the sort of the classic jazz. And we did that for a while. Things slowed down in that county. We sort of moved closer to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. where we could actually do more cash flipping, which ended up being like probably one of the most difficult aspects of land is managing cash flow. You're always having to balance like the cost of acquisitions to the cost of what you're selling, to some mix of that will be sold in notes. So that's the most challenging part. So for those reasons, we ended up moving into areas where we felt we could do more cash deals. Then we spread out way too thin. I learned a very expensive lesson, trying to buy land all over the country. And ultimately we found out what...
I'm going to pause on that real quick, because that was a mistake I made myself when I was just getting started. I was flipping homes, but I did some here in Washington, and I was like, I was getting deals from Google Ads because I learned how to do Google Ads, and I was running them. And I was like, you know what? I bet I could get deals all over the country this way. So I did that. Yeah. I opened up my Google Ads to literally the entire United States. It's the worst deal, or it's the worst mistake not the worst mistake, but it is a mistake when you do that. We preach on this podcast, focus in on a niche, and that's both an asset class and an area, because there's, especially if you're doing commercial properties, you get economies of scale. You also understand that area better. And, if you're doing something like land or flipping houses or wholesaling or whatever it is, if you are marketing across the United States, you have to find buyers for all of those areas.
Good luck.
It is a nightmare. So sorry, I jumped into your story. I just wanted to pause on that real quick.
That was the expensive lesson, man. And I can recount instances over and over again where I was just getting in over my skis. And, luckily we were still buying land at pennies on the dollar for the most part. So I can really only think of a couple deals that we got burned on and we actually lost money. But what we did get stuck with is long hold times. So when you go spend a few $1,000s on a property, or $10,000 or $20,000, but then it doesn't generate any income for 2 years. It's just this big weight on your balance sheet. It's a big headache. It's emotionally taxing for us because, again, I didn't come into this with wealth or anything like this. So the whole idea of, just the risks associated with and having money locked up in something that wasn't moving was, and I guess still is today, one of the biggest challenges. We have, I don't know, like $3 million worth of inventory that's, just pending sale. We got to go find somebody to buy this land from us. And that's heavily dependent on the market and whatever else. So, a lot of lessons there. But it was this funny trend in the industry where everybody said, scale your business, get more employees and go do more deals. And I got really swept up in that and felt like I could, dominate in that arena. But now, like you said, I'm much more interested in the niches. Whether that's a specific area. We like to stay just in Texas, really in a few areas in Texas. We like to do our little subdivide projects and flip areas that we know we can flip in.
Yep, absolutely. Land seems, I've done a few land deals, not too many, but I don't have as much knowledge as you on land deals, but from the surface, it always seems so simple. You buy land, you sell it, buy land, sell it. But there's always things that pop up, at least in my experience, the deals that I've done, that just I would have never thought would be an issue. So what are the biggest mistakes you see people make when it comes to doing land deals?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, you just get burned in the due diligence. We had a deal. There's a guy that I'm mentoring right now who's I'm trying to do the same thing. He's kind of starting with no money. I'm teaching him how to build lists by himself, just operate completely off cold calling. And he's doing a great job, but he brought me a deal, which the initial underwriting was excellent. This guy was willing to owner finance the 70-acre tract to us, about an hour and a half south of Dallas here. There's county road frontage on both sides. It was a very simple subdivide into 4 lots. We would have bought it for around $6,000 an acre. And the disposition price looked to be around $12,000 to $14,000 an acre. And on 4 tracts for a simple subdivision, we could have made, I don't remember, it was a couple $100,000 or $300,000, something like that, in a few months. It was a pretty desirable area. We looked into it. We kind of played around with the numbers a little bit. We started working at maybe seeing if he could own or finance it so that our capital input was a little lower and we could have a higher cash on cash return. And I started getting this feeling like this guy was being a little deceptive. So I brought it to my partner, had him help underwrite the deal. And he said, hey, I'm looking at all these comps and it seems like a big factor here for valuation is water. And I said, no, don't worry. I already checked. There's a water line that runs right past the property. You can see homes on either side. It's not going to be an issue. But once we get it under contract, I'll go ahead and contact the water company and verify all that. But he pushed back on me. He said, he's like, go check that out first. So I go check that out first. And sure enough, this guy that we're buying the land from, he bought it with the intention of doing the exact same thing. And what he did is he reached out to the water company, and the water company says, hey, we no longer have capacity on that line. And the only way for us to run water to you would be to upgrade the line from this area to this area. And then we would have to run it across the property. And then when you factored in that, plus the additional surveying costs and the headache and everything else that would roll into it, it sucked almost all of the profit out of the deal. And that's something that, say you're using a third-party due diligence person or just lack of experience, you could have got caught up in that and bought a property that you would have lost money on, and it would have taken you years to get out of it, or you would have had to sell it short. So that's an example. But I mean, there's all sorts of zoning, bad neighbors, inaccurate surveys, inaccurate mapping software, because you're oftentimes just relying on a GIS map or some series of satellite imageries. Water tables. If you have to drop a well and you don't know how expensive that well is, wells in Texas can range from $10,000 to $300,000, depending on how deep you have to go. So it is kind of a different language. You have to focus more on like utilities or access to utilities, oftentimes easements, things of that nature. But then also one thing that we encounter a whole lot, which I think is maybe more common with land, is messy title issues.
Breaks in title. Because,
these affordable properties, which is usually where we operate in, oftentimes they're not willed correctly, or the will doesn't get probated, or, so it's very common to run into a long closing time, or, needing to bring attorneys in to clean things up, or go through the probate process, or do quiet title or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you master that, that ends up being a very valuable tool for you.
Yeah. That's actually, I'm curious. I'm actually dealing with a property when we market for mobile home RV parks, which is what I buy. A lot of times we get land because somebody had a mobile home park at one point, and I'm dealing with this one. I actually have it under contract right now, and it was the owners died, and they basically, it said in the will or something, it was like it goes to their heirs, but there's essentially a break in title to the person who currently owns it, because the original owner, they died in like the early 1900s, and there was two brothers. Both of them have passed. One brother didn't have any kids. The other brother had this one daughter, and she's the one who owns it now, who's selling to me. But there is that break because it doesn't directly go to her. Yeah. Is that something that can be fixed, or those breaks in title, are those usually things that you pass on? Before we continue on with today's guest, I want to tell you guys about a community I'm launching on School to help investors like yourself grow your own portfolio. In this community, you'll get access to all the docs I use, all the systems I've built, everything I've used to grow my own portfolio, as well as instructions and guidance on how to get out there and find great deals, how to finance those deals, and then how to manage them for great returns. Since we're just launching it, the price will be set at a measly $20 per month, and whatever price you join at is the price you'll have for life. We will be increasing the price as the group grows, so if you're at all interested in growing your portfolio along other investors, now is the time to join. I will put the link somewhere in the bio or on our podcast website at therealestateinvestingclub.com, so if you are interested, head on over there. With that said, let's get back to the podcast.
There's always a way to fix it. Now, is there a way to fix it economically? I don't know. And this does vary dramatically state to state, but the sort of founding principle, I'm not an attorney, but
yeah.
I have done a lot of research. I've interviewed probate attorneys on my podcast, things like that. But the foundational underpinning of real estate law in this country is to keep land from going idle. Like that's the last thing you want. That's why there's all these sorts of things for like ag exemption. There's all these different ways in which the government is trying to push society to utilize land to the best of their ability. So probate, all those laws around heirship are all geared towards making it possible for land to be used.
Continue to be used, yeah.
Yeah, so typically there's going to be a process involved, but depending on where you are, that process can be as or more expensive than the property itself. I recently dealt with a probate case on a very inexpensive piece of land that we were like, this is simple. This lady died. It's not a big deal. In Texas, there's a separate document that we often file, which is just called an affidavit of heirship, and we'll just bypass that whole process. But it didn't work. We talked to a probate attorney, and he's like, yeah, you have to take this in front of the judge. And because this other person is effectively being sued for their ownership, they have to be represented, even if you can't find them. So they were going to say, you have to go hire what's called I can't remember now, attorney ad valorem or something like that.
Sure. Okay.
And it was a nasty process. I didn't do it. I walked away from it. But it's like, yeah, you effectively hire an attorney, and that attorney has the ability to represent their non-existent client to as much as they want. So they could bill over and over and over.
Oh,
and they'll,
Jesus.
I mean, there's really no cap on what they could bill, and you have to pay for it. So you're not only paying your attorney, but you're paying this attorney that's operating against you through the entire process, and you have no ability for. And this is, Texas. It might be different wherever you're. But
this is a Texas property, yeah.
I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Because there's no limits, and you can't even call the attorney and be like, "Hey, here's the situation. Can you give me a quote so you can try to budget for it?" So I just talked to a couple of the local attorneys, and they're like, "Yeah." We're in the middle of this process right now, and we're already in it for more than the house is worth. Yeah. So effectively, we're just gonna have to walk away from it.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. This particular property I'm talking about, she was going to sell it to me for like $5,000, and I think the market price is like $20,000. And at this point, I'm just like, nah, too confusing.
Well, we can talk about it off camp, because there is I do have sort of we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
There's a way around it sometimes.
Yeah. But breaking title, that is one thing that happens, especially with land. There's a lot of small title things that I've noticed. I've done, a handful of land deals, and there's a lot of small title things that pop up that you just don't expect. But then they're there and you're like, shit, how do I deal with this?
Yep.
So yeah, let's talk about finding the deals, because especially for land, that's the big driver of your business, is finding these deals. So what is your favorite way, or how are you guys finding deals now? Method-wise,
Yeah, right now, I'll kind of give you two answers. One is the state of the industry, and then what I'm doing. So the state of the industry is, it used to be, when I started, you could effectively, send a carrier pigeon and it would come back with a deed to a property. I mean, it was so low hanging. We would buy a property for every 100 pieces of mail that we would send. It was really insane.
Wow, that is great. Jesus.
That is not the case today. There are people who are running 10, 15, 20,000 pieces of mail campaign and not getting a purchase out of it. There's a few reasons for that. Most people are just kind of blasting entire counties with really roughshod pricing or no pricing at all. And there's all sorts of mistakes that the industry itself is making. But it's definitely more advanced. I mean, you really have to now understand the areas that you're marketing to. You need to have your comps dialed in. Oftentimes, to be most effective, you're going to have some sort of multi-touch system. So you're going to cold call them, send them a letter, and then 2 weeks later, you're sending a follow-up postcard. And you also skip trace their emails, so you can try to run targeted ads at them if possible. There's a lot going on to really try to get people engaged and for your brand to stand out. But I still believe the most effective way is to skip trace a list and get on the phones. If you have the stomach for it, that is the least expensive way. You just generate a list either through purchasing it through a third-party software like DataTree or something, or what we do is we aggregate all of the list information from the county maps. So I pay someone to go through and click on each individual parcel, gather all the information off, and what that does is it pre-scrapes the entire list for me. We're never going to click on a property that is irregularly shaped or entirely in flood zone or doesn't have road access. So it limits the list to people with properties that we actually want to buy. So it actually makes it cheaper than buying from data. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds. But anyways.
Yeah, no, that's good. So you go
I
to the
suggest cold
actual
calling.
county website. You don't actually you don't use like Property Radar is something that I love to use for
Nope.
single family and land, anything like that.
Nope. Yeah. So land records, especially in areas where we want to operate in, are very sparsely populated.
Mm.
So, Data Tree, these third party list aggregators, they are very up to date in like cities and highly populated areas. But, for example, one of the areas that we work in is Limestone County. Data Tree, all these, they have almost no records. There's entire counties in Texas that have inaccurate records.
Yeah, title hasn't been passed in 100 years.
There's a county in Texas where the courthouse burned down. They lost everything. What's
Wow,
Data
that's
Tree
crazy.
going to do?
Yeah.
So, I also made, and I'll just tell you one of the most expensive mistakes I ever made when I was in that phase of just kind of buying land all over the place. I once bought a 20,000 parcel list from Data Tree and just priced it within like 10 minutes and sent out the mailer. So it was like $10,000 worth of mail. All of the acreage for that list was 1 decimal point off. Oof. So all of my offers were 10 times more than they should have been.
Got just flooded with calls. I will take your offer.
Everybody was ready to sell. I don't know. It was crazy. So yeah, I effectively threw away $10,000 just because not only was the data bad, but I was just operating hastily. So, kind of expensive lesson learned there. But so I don't use those services at all. You need a competitive edge. So your competitive edge in every space should start with, in my opinion, the best data possible. Not the most convenient or the cheapest, the best data.
Yep.
And the county, if you call the county tax office and you say, hey, I need to update my address, they go into the software and they go, doot, 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 doot. And then 5 minutes later, the address is updated on the GIS map for the most part. So if your goal is to have the best data or the most current address or whatever is going to make you stand out, then there's really only one source for that information. Now, it takes a little bit more work, but like I said, it's actually cheaper for my business because I do not send mail to properties that I don't actually want to buy. I don't flood my acquisition manager with leads that we don't actually want to engage with. So like the downstream costs are way make up for the upstream effort.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. So, and you mentioned cold calling is actually your favorite method, even above letters, mailers these days. You just prefer to get on the phone and call.
Yeah. And really that kind of brings me to what I was answering before. These are what I consider now the industry standards. We do really limited acquisition campaigns now, but most of my deals now come from a sizable network. So I make myself valuable and available to other people in our industry. I run a local meetup group here in Dallas. It's one of the biggest networks of land investors there is. My funding company, my marketing company, all these different channels are constantly reaching out and pulling people into my network. And they bring me deals or the complicated issues or the things that they know I have experience with. And then oftentimes I'm either funding or doing some sort of joint venture deal with them, providing them coaching, or every once in a while, like I said, I'll take somebody from the ground up and educate them fully in the industry and say, hey, just bring me all your deals,
Oh, nice.
And I'll make sure that you get paid.
Yeah, that's smart. Cool, man. I love this topic. I love, you sound like your strategies, you've evolved over time. And so seeing that evolution really does help, anybody who wants to get started. With that said, we have run down the clock, so we do need to move on. Are you ready for the quick question round?
We'll see. Yeah.
All right. It starts with what does it start with? It starts with education. Could be any form, could be a conference you've gone to, mentorship program you've been a part of, movie you've seen, book you've read, whatever. I just need 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom and then one for real estate.
So I would say general life wisdom would be either between, I'll give you 2, the Tao of Pooh. Like I found it's very important to stay calm. So that book is excellent. Or the 7 Habits
Winnie
of
the
Highly...
Pooh, right?
Yes. Yep. Winnie the Pooh. The
love
Tao of Pooh. Or the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I know it's kind of very common, but man, do I go back to that almost on a daily basis in my head. Then as far as like education, I would ascribe a lot of my success to what I studied in college, which is Greek and Latin, because if you study other languages, it programs your brain to think logically and get to first principles very quickly. So anything that you can do to work on languages and learning languages, you're training your brain to operate maximally. So I would say that's probably one of the best things you can do to help yourself across the board.
Very cool. Yeah, when I studied abroad in Spain to learn Spanish one time, and those 6 months, my brain was just it's crazy when you're learning a new language in the country that you're learning, that you're trying to learn the language of. You just turn to jelly. Your brain just gets exploded. But afterwards, it's amazing how much language really does affect your ability to think. So that's a interesting call out, and a good one. So that moves us to the next question. This is for your younger self. Let's go back to the Logan, who was just getting started. He was just closing that first land deal. Go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
Don't be afraid to move quickly and make mistakes. It's fine.
Yeah. Mistakes will happen. There's no way around them, because you don't know everything, especially when you're just getting started. So just get deals done. Mm-hmm. All right. Next question is about the U.S. It's a big place. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single, usually I say metro, but you are a land guy. So I'm just going to say single area that you are most excited about investing in today.
Ooh, great state of Texas.
Okay. What area in Texas do you like?
Really the whole state. I mean, most people you'll ask will say the Golden Triangle, which is between Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. Yep. But for me, really, if I had to target a specific market, it would be within a 2-hour radius of Dallas-Fort Worth.
DFW. All right. All right. Next question. We've actually already touched on this one, but I'll change it up a little bit. The question is, it all starts with getting in contact with a seller. So what is your favorite way to generate leads? You've already mentioned cold calling. So I'm going to say, for each stage of your growth in the land industry, what is your favorite way to generate leads? Does it always cold calling, or do you feel like once you have enough cash flow coming in that you should evolve to a new style of marketing? Answer that one.
Yeah, so I would say now my chief way is to make myself available and valuable, and have people bring to me. Because it puts me in like my favorite position, which is of service to other people. That's when I find myself most happy. It's like real estate actually doesn't make me very happy. The freedom of real estate makes me very happy. The relationships in real estate make me very happy. The critical thinking, that sort of stuff makes me happy. But I feel most happy when I'm able to help people. Yeah.
Yep. Nice.
Like, when you're talking to someone, like I did a deal last year where we funded a guy's flip. I kind of helped him through the process of underwriting and all that. And he made $100,000 on that flip. And just his voice when I told him, like, hey, I just wired you, $102,000. That's a fun call to make,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next question is about lessons learned. Not every deal that we get into goes the way we expect it. In fact, many times things go wrong and we get to learn a lesson. So what was a deal that went a little sideways for you, and what was the lesson you pulled from it?
Oh, man, that's a lot I'll tell you one that we're in the middle of right now. We have this big subdivision in Tennessee that we had owner finance. We did a bunch of improvements on, and I had the managers operating it for the most part. And I took a very hands-off approach early on when I should have been much more hands-on and much more involved in that process of ensuring everything was communicated well, because we've effectively had $1 million worth of transactions just held hostage at a title company until today. We're closing our first 2. It's been like 6 months that we've had transactions locked up because of shenanigans that are unnecessary and avoidable.
Yep. Be involved is the lesson there. It sounds like, even if, there is a stage at which you kind of step away and let your team take care of it. But being involved, at least to the extent to you understand what's going on, I feel like is very important.
Yep.
All right. And that leads us to the last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a 2-parter. Where can they find you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Yeah, go to thelandfixer.com, www.thelandfixer.com. You'll find my podcast there, as well as links to a lot of other services and things that I do. What they can find is just not someone who's selling a course. I don't have anything to sell. I genuinely try to bring interesting and fun content around land investing to the world. The episode we just published this week was talking with a gold miner, Canadian gold miner, and his success in Mexico and how one puts together and structures a mining operation. And that was fascinating because it is, minerals and all that is a very large overlap with what we do in land. So, and again, no courses to sell, no way to try to get money out of you, just trying to build my network, be valuable and available.
Perfect. I will put that link in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out to Logan, all you got to do is just click a little more in the description. It'll pull down that full description, and in there you can find his links. All right, man, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Gabe, thank you.
Absolutely. For everybody who's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me, Gabe, at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just leave us a review. Other than that, hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right, before I officially sign off, I have a quick announcement to make. If you're interested in becoming a passive investor in one of my deals, my own company, Kaizen Properties, is looking for capital partners for our upcoming projects. We invest in what are known as recession-resistant assets, mainly self-storage facilities, mobile home and RV parks, and industrial properties. If you're interested in investing and would like to learn a little bit more about my company, our investing criteria, and some of the previous projects we've done, go to the Real Estate Investing Club podcast at therealestateinvestingclub.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. Click on the Invest With Us button. That'll pop up the investor form. Fill that out, and we will reach back out to you as soon as we can. Or if you prefer a little bit more of a personal touch, you can reach out to me at gabe@therealestateinvestingclub.com. So really, that is it. Again, it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys during this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.